Good day, and a very warm welcome to Leaders Lounge, the fireside chat series from Quantum Dialogues, proudly presented by NGenious Solutions. I am Mudit Vyas, Group Editor here at Quantum Dialogues. In each of these editions, we sit down with distinguished technology leaders who are reimagining the future of IT, digital transformation, and enterprise agility, not just in theory, but in meaningful practice. Today, I'm especially pleased to be joined by Giles Lindsay, Group CIO at Lifeaway. Giles is widely recognized for his pioneering work in building cloud-native API platforms within the long-term rental sector. Beyond his roles at Lifeway, he served as president of Business Agility Institute UK, is an Amazon #1 best-selling author on the subject of business agility, and has been honored with the numerous global CIO awards for his contributions to the field. This collaboration also feeds into the forthcoming book by our CEO, Mr. Nilesh Mehta, titled Reinventing IT Operations, where insights from the thought leaders like Giles will play a central role. Giles, I thank you for being so kind enough to join us today and be a part of Leaders Lounge, and also being featuring in Nilesh's book. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for having me.
Thank you so much. So just to start the conversation, and I want to start with the journey and the purpose that you're trying to solve here. So, as we know, you've led a lot of technology teams across fintech, travel, consumer service, and now at Lifeway. What core purpose of guiding or belief that you have for those transitions, and how have you taken them forward till date?
Thanks for the question. I think my guiding belief has always been centered around enabling meaningful, sustainable agility. Right? Agility that actually puts people first and delivers the best possible business outcomes, not just simply process outputs. In my career, from fintech to travel, healthcare to consumer services, I've kind of consistently helped organizations shift from, I would say, delivery bottlenecks to flow-based, value-led ways of working. And what has remained constant in my drive to create environments where adaptability is not an afterthought, but actually for the organization, a foundational principle. This belief has led me to develop my CLEAR model, which I use. And obviously CLEAR stands for culture, leadership, execution, adaptability, and responsiveness. And I did this as a response to the limitations I saw in how Agile was actually being applied in real business. So, I think that's probably, as I said, that's the real core purpose, is about enabling meaningful, sustainable agility.
That's great. Taking forward your agility and people first approach, and you've championed it pretty well, as we know from all the clear mentions that we have seen from many publications. Now, how do you reconcile with competing with demands, speed, costs, and risks while keeping teams empowered and being very creative in their work on a regular basis?
I think it's around the context of the organization. There is no same approach that you can take to one business to the next business. There's no little black book. There's no cookie cutter pattern approach at all. And therefore, it's about doing a lot of listening on arrival to understand what's working well in the business operating model and what isn't working so well. And obviously then applying strategies and tactics which you might have had experience of in previous organizations, but do not expect that minute one, day one, you are going to have the right answer for the right situation that you are trying to help solve. So for me, it's really been a case of learning that I have to go in with a fresh pair of eyes and ears each and every time to an organization, learn again from the ground up, from that sort of grassroots level up, and then apply, obviously, strategy that, I may have used in previous organizations and see how that works. I can tell you it's going to be a case of fail fast, succeed faster, because obviously we are not always going to get it right as technology leaders in that very first instance. So, it's a case of try again.
Absolutely, yeah. No, as you already mentioned, no, every problem has a different solution to it, and there's no quick fix to things.
Correct.
You can't put band-aids over everything and then move on. So,
Yes,
yeah.
I've seen too
So
many people put
that's
band-aids and elastoplast and other things and duct tape over these things over the years, and they still rip off over
yeah.
time. So, yeah.
Well, and as they rip off, it becomes even bad, a problem to solve. So rather than having a quick fix, it's always not necessary that you maybe fix
Right.
it in a longer time, but take the right approach to it. So that brings me to the second question or the third question out of this premise where, can you describe a strategic decision where you opted for long-term adaptability over a quick fix, and what made you have that choice?
Okay, so describe a time I chose a long-term adaptability over a quick win. Well, um, at a fintech I worked at a couple of years ago, we could have made short-term revenue or made a short-term revenue push with big, heavy delivery sprints. But instead, we focused on building the internal capability and infrastructure ultimately to scale. And that included team structure, DevOps structure, platform modularity, etc. And it meant that it meant delaying a big splash, but it allowed us to handle rapid customer onboarding without actually breaking things. And in my career, I've seen too many transformations actually falter, break, stop, whatever you want to call it, by chasing things like the wrong metrics, actually, how you are going to track what you are actually doing with your customers. Long term adaptability has to be built into the organization's DNA. It's not something that is simply bolted on when it's too late.
That sounds like something which you might have cherished in a longer term, where you might have reaped benefits on a later stage. Great. Those are great insights for me to learn and for our viewers also to listen to, coming from somebody who's done and moved on from there. So, now that there are a lot of things that are human driven, and since AI has our data strategy has come into the frame, how AI and analytics have evolved rapidly over time, but no ethical and no governance frameworks often they lag. How have you pursued data-driven decisions and innovation in a responsible way where it's both in terms of governance and in terms of overall uh, transformation of the organization and a long-term benefit?
Data is your most powerful capability. And I've always believed that data should enable, not control, the decision making that goes on inside the organization. Whether introducing AI pilots or building data platforms, I always embed very early on ethical questions, right? Things like who benefits from this? Where is bias introduced? How do we explain the decisions we are working? And, I've built a number of AI models over the last few years, including an AI model for my Clear model. And I built these principles, as I always do, into the core, making AI really a support mechanism for agility, not a replacement for human judgment. And, we can't have that for, happening in organizations design. Klarna got rid of a lot of people recently, thinking that AI can deal with a lot of the customer service and chat capabilities, etc., etc., but actually found that their net promoter score tanked, and they realized they needed to bring an entire army of people back because people really needed to have that relationship with humans, not simply with AI. So, as I said, it's a support mechanism for agility. It's not a replacement for human judgment. And ultimately, the future of AI must, and I really do stress that, must be shaped by responsible leadership that does put transparency, inclusion, and adaptability first.
So, probably all the conversation I wanted to have with you has, the second question has transpired mostly in your answers. So my next question is probably half answered, but I'll now like to answer it anyways, question it
Go
anyways.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
So, no, as in, I wanted to know what are the, concrete steps that you would suggest that, CIOs take today, to elevate AI from isolated pilots into, enterprise-wide values without getting, marred with, governance debates. And, what are the sort of fillers that they need to look at, and what are the long-term benefits or, shortfalls that they might be experiencing?
There's some key words there, and thank you for a brilliant question. I always say to people when we're having this kind of conversation, how can we scale without getting stuck in those ethics and governance debates? I always say to people, start small, think big, and ultimately try and integrate widely. Many CIOs I know run isolated pilots that actually never go to production, never scale, because they're actually disconnected from the real work going on inside the organization. And I've had this conversation with many of my peers, certainly over the last 12 to 24 months. My approach is to embed AI inside value streams, use features from the Clear model, such as responsiveness and execution principles, to validate quickly, and ultimately to design governance as an enabler, not simply a gatekeeper. We're not having these stage gates all the way through this process, because that is going to slow us down, if not stop us altogether. And those pilots will continue to never scale because they will always be fully disconnected from the real work. So this means kind of moving the mindset and shifting from approval committees, if you like, to guardrails, feedback loops, cross-functional review teams, etc., etc. And for me, this keeps momentum while maintaining the trust. And it's that one key word, trust, which is the most important here, because that's what we ultimately need inside the organization. So, I think, for me, this is how I do it. I've actually quite passionate about the whole domain of AI ethics and governance. I've recently written an article and a white paper on the topic that the Chartered Institute for IT, BCS, recently published. And obviously it's something I can share as a link to the listeners after this recording.
That'd be great now to read into that and learn more about it. So moving on from governance and strategy and other things, I would like to shift into transformation and culture. So,
Brilliant.
by all the conversations I've had with all senior leaders till date, real transformation, it really hinges on mindsets as much as on technology. So, what is your playbook for shifting an organization from, let's say, a truly waterfall model to a truly agile model and learning oriented culture? How do you plan that and how do you proceed with that?
Great question, and obviously something I am truly passionate about when it gets to the culture. For me, transformation, digital transformation, agile transformation, whatever you are trying to achieve within your organization, it does not start with the frameworks and the tooling. It actually starts with a real leadership mindset. And as such, I don't have this true playbook because it's always about context counts, right? Again, it's understanding, the uniqueness of each organization that I am going into ultimately help. But my principles, I would say, include aligning leaders around the agile values, reshaping incentives, designing rituals that support curiosity and learning as well for everybody across the organization's design. And that means replacing kind of a command and control style management with, fingers crossed, clear intent and autonomy. I use retrospectives, I use OKRs, and I use really lightweight governance internally in the business as real sort of culture shaping tools. And this aims to make, for me, feedback and iteration feel natural across all levels of an organization, all the way from the teams who are closest to delivering the outcomes to the customer and delighting them, all the way through to the board.
Great details. I really understood not too much from it, but OKRs is something that I have closely worked on, and we do implement internally as well. So, so coming from OKRs and other things, beyond these benchmarkings and other things, and beyond pulse surveys, how do you measure cultural change and connect it back to the business outcomes?
Again, great question, because that cultural change is going to be different in every organization. I often use a real combination of leading and lagging indicators, leading and lagging metrics, whatever your preferred phrase is, vernacular is. For example, one of the things I do track is psychological safety in the organization through surveys, pulse surveys, engagement metrics, then correlate that with the throughput, the cycle times that are happening with the deliveries, and the business KPIs. Obviously, again, I mentioned it earlier, customer NPS scores, right? That's one of the key things that we need to be tracking. If, excuse me, if culture shifts properly, the data will show it, but only if we are measuring the right things. I would say I'm probably a firm believer in value over vanity, right? Forget the vanity metrics that we end up tracking often inside organizations that sort of say we're awesome, but actually, in fact, we're not. And I often use that value over vanity lens to help other executives, my peers, often in the organization, shift from simply reporting activity and things that have happened in the past. I often say, the vanity stuff, the lagging metrics are in the rear view mirror behind me from my car, and the things that I want, the value that I'm chasing, is in my windscreen going forward. So it's really about that shift from simply reporting activity to measuring the overall impact of the culture change that's happening inside the organization.
Thank you. That was really in depth, and I could really resonate with that. Now, the second segment of our conversation, where I'll invite Mr. Nilesh Mehta, CEO of NGenious Solutions and the author of Reinventing IT Operations. So, no, Nilesh, thank you for joining us. And he would like probably to have a couple of questions with you, and that would feature in the book, or we'll take inspiration from these questions to the book. Over to you, Nilesh.
Thanks, Mudit. Appreciate it, Giles. Thank you so much for joining the call today. It's a pleasure to listen to your reviews and learn from it, obviously. Just a couple of words about me. My name is Nilesh Mehta. I'm the founder and CEO at NGenious Solutions. About 25 plus years of working in the enterprise, solutioning space, having worked with, technology stacks from Microsoft to ServiceNow, Salesforce, and many other platforms. And as a consulting firm, working with many end customers and C-level executives in defining their transformation journey over the last 2 decades, and then operations management. One of the things that I've tried to do, or I'm trying to work on, just like you, is to jot down what we've learned over the last couple of decades, put it on a piece of paper, and see how we can share what we've learned, and hopefully somebody can benefit from the knowledge we've gained over here, right? So my purpose with writing Reinventing, IT Operations is, speaking to, or writing up things that I've learned personally myself, the pros and cons of different approaches that, like you said, we've taken over the years, talking to CXOs like yourself, and then combining it into some kind of a playbook. I know early on you mentioned that no two companies are the same, and you can't really take a playbook from point A to point B and just copy and paste. It's going to work from here. But the idea was most enterprises have many senior experts around the world, people with 25, 30, 40 years of experience. They have a lot of budget that they can use to work and build that infrastructure and the operations management. How can we take that into writing and take it to the small and mid-sized companies and say, well, we understand you may not have the budget and you probably don't have somebody with that 30, 40 years of experience working with you. But here's what we can tell you, that if we have points 1 to 10, maybe you don't need all of them. Maybe your company can focus on 2, 3, and 7 and still start getting to a point where you can scale up to certain points and, and get to that next level in your organization, right? So that's the idea. It's not something that will become a complete guidance, but a potential solutioning options that say, here are the ideas. Now take what works for you, and then maybe that helps you scale. So that's the approach that I'm taking in writing this book over here. I appreciate your thoughts on digital transformation. Everything that you said makes sense. The only thing I think I wanted to add to one of your points was the point you made about trust in an organization. I think trust is one aspect of it. The other thing is, making sure that we always think about security first approach, right? In the day-to-day right now, especially around AI transformations, it is the trust and security. I think they go hand in hand together, and making sure everybody's thinking from that perspective. Now, I do have 2 small questions for you, if you don't mind me asking.
Brilliant.
In the last few years, one of the key things that we focus on is low code, no code programming, which means enabling business users to build their solutions faster. And IT is always lean and mean, and they're always busy with a lot of different stacks going on. But in the path of digital transformation, low code, no code plays a very important role, basically giving powers to the end user. So go and build your own solution. How do you pursue CIOs and CXOs looking at embracing low code, no code automation, at the same time building that governance around it, and what's the impact that you've seen on the organizations lately?
Oh, great question. And for me, I've always seen low code as an accelerant and not as a replacement for other development capabilities. I would say to scale it, CIOs have to build it on a proper, solid architectural foundation, right? Something that might be API first, something that might be event driven, something that has proper data ownership when we talked about data earlier. The real risk, however, is this idea, and I've seen it firsthand myself, is shadow IT creeping in due to unclear governance, right? So my kind of guiding principle, again, going back to those, is to open up capability to be able to use things like low code, but make sure that at the same time we're closing down the risk. And that means treating, as we call them, citizen developers. Right? That means kind of really, again, goes back to the words you've just mentioned, trust. It means treating those system developers as partners inside the organization design, not outsiders, trusting them and ensuring that the platforms that they are using, that they are building on, are properly monitored, properly secure, and properly integrated into the organization's core systems. And because if you don't have that, you run a real risk of security breaches, people putting products out into production from non-IT parts of the organization, again, which can actually do more damage to the business than good. So, you've got to have the right governance in place. But as I said, it's to open up the capability to get as many people in the organization to become those citizen developers and treat them as those partners, but at the same time, making sure the proper governance is in place to close down any risk issues that actually arise.
That's awesome. I think I couldn't, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But one of the things that I think we've also heard a lot of companies say is building around a center of excellence, right? Which means when you are trying to do this, citizen developers, they still need the learnings and the founding, framework to say, how do I do this stuff? At the same time, they also need some kind of senior people in the organization that they could bounce ideas for us and say, you know what, I plan to do this stuff. Can I get some suggestions from you on, am I going down the right path, the wrong path? Also, the center of excellence can help them build reusable components. So division A is building something that division B is looking for, and they're writing their own stuff. Or why not combine them and build into a repurposable solution that everybody else in the organization can use? And that's part of governance, right? Is keeping an eye out for what people are building and saying, well, I see 3 people have built the same things over here. Maybe it's time to combine this together and say, here's one standard solution that now go at, go crazy. Everybody in the company can use, kind of thing, right? So that's great. I completely agree with you there. My next question is building SaaS solutions and custom enterprise applications. How do you focus on scale, security, interoperability, and making sure that technology right now, because it's evolving every 24 hours, what you built yesterday is probably not useful enough today. How do you continuously innovate on top of that?
So I probably look at 3 key patterns when we are building this kind of governance that we've been talking about into the organization. I like to have, and I think this maps to precisely what you were just sharing, I like to have a decentralized governance for sharing the capabilities and the principles and the outcomes that these teams are doing. And to a degree, it's about giving teams freedom to choose tools, but within a kind of common framework of controls that we put in place for everybody. So that maps brilliantly back to what you were just sharing. I also like to have clear life cycle management all the way from, and real clarity in the business, from procurement at the very first step all the way through to end of life to offboarding, with proper documented ownership and checkpoints on the way through that journey. We've got to have proper lifecycle management to manage that, especially with third parties that we are working with. And the last piece, I think, goes back again to what you were just sharing. For me, I hate this idea that people talk about the business and IT, or the business and technology. We're kind of like, we're one and the same organization. So if people are talking in that way, I get them to sort of say this has to have technology and business co-ownership. So that security, you mentioned earlier as well, compliance, user values, everything like that need to be shared across all functions, not left to the IT teams and development teams and engineering teams alone within the organization. If your organization does think, truly of, the business as one whole entity of everybody, front office, back office, technology, everything together, great. But if not, I go round sort of banging a bit of a drum by saying tech and business co-ownership right the way across the board of everything, and that for me is one of the winning criteria.
That is awesome. Just amazing insights over there. And I love the part there about documentation, right? That has been one of the biggest challenges across all organizations, especially when you do
100%.
citizen development. Technology team is like, well, they're going to build a solution. And when they leave, we have to support this stuff. And where's the documentation? I think one of the use cases and referring to AI that Mudit was and you were talking about before is, in the old days, coming up with documentation was a big challenge because it would take hours and hours to build it and take the knowledge base, stuff like that. With
100%.
AI, that's one of the benefits is you don't have an excuse. Use AI to come up with your documentation in seconds and minutes and reverse engineer your solution and document the exact business logic so it can be translated and given to technology to support it properly. One of the best use cases I would say is, give it to them as it is. Whatever you do, just use natural language, come up with the documentation, share with IT. So as a backup, we know somebody can manage and support this for you. Should there be a change in your team, you don't want business to be stuck because nobody knows what you've implemented over there.
Totally agree.
Yep. Now, this is amazing. Thank you so much. I am very, impressed by the insight that you shared today. And with your permission, at some point when the book publishes, we'll be able to help take advantage of some of your thoughts over here and obviously put you in there. But thank you so much for the insights. I appreciate it. Mudit, back to you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. Thanks, Nilesh. Thanks, Giles, for those great insights and invaluable contribution to the book. From now on, we move into the rapid fire, a bit of fun after all the serious conversations and other things. So I'll have 5 questions for you. So you can choose to answer them or not to answer them based on your understanding. So my first question to you is your most exciting and emerging trend for 2025.
So I mean, obviously, it's going to be very specific for me in the kind of the job I do. But probably AI integrated agility tools, I think is probably going to be one of the best trends that I'm starting to see, and I'm really excited by the fact that AI is starting to enhance, not just simply automate, team decision making, strategy alignment, and I think tools that can support things like continuous discovery, flow measurement, sentiment analysis, I think will help redefine what agility ultimately looks like in practice.
Thank you. One leadership habit that you never skip.
Great question. Probably one-on-one check-ins, I think. Whether I'm doing a coaching role or an executive role, I talked about it earlier. I said I always make space to listen without jumping in straight with both feet into the world of solutions. It's kind of my way to stay grounded and connected to the reality of what's going on with the people in the organization.
That's definitely very important, just to stay grounded and be a people's person rather than being, having your own way somewhere and deviating from what the people are the actual resource that would take things forward. So the third question is the biggest myth that people think is that Agile at scale. What is it and how can you explain that?
I love this one, and it made me chuckle when I saw this question earlier. The biggest myth: just follow a scaled framework and somehow it'll magically work. Absolute rubbish, right? And simply no framework out there today can substitute for culture, context, or leadership, the three things that I've sort of really been talking about today. Most scaling efforts actually fail because they copy the mechanics, as we were talking about earlier, taking a little black book from one organization and going to another, and they simply ignore this mindset, this agile mindset, this growth mindset this leadership mindset that's ultimately needed inside the organization.
That's really very insightful, because you really can't change people's mindset, but you can always have an opinion where they would want to think and discuss it. This leads me to the fourth question on my list. Your go-to way of recharging after a major rollout or a major big decision that you've made.
I actually I like doing the walks and things like that. I like making reflection notes as well. But I also think that, I enjoy actually writing books. And I actually find that it's kind of a way for all the sort of the conversations and insights that I've captured over time. It's kind of putting those down inside one of the books I've written. It kind of helps me switch off from all the noise and to tune into what really matters for people, so that I can create something that, again, I hope somebody wants to read and actually makes a difference to how they perform their job at the end of the day.
Okay, so I can definitely resonate with that. No, having spoken to people with the same spectrum, that you need a way out of it all the time to focus on your next big thing. So
Absolutely.
You need to eject from a place to be again entered at a place where you have to start again from scratch somewhere. So that leads me to the last question of the session, and this would be a one-word answer. So I would want to have a one word that sums up your tech philosophy.
My favorite word, the word I use more than anything else in the workplace: clarity. Clarity is what sort of sums up perfectly not just my tech philosophy, but agile philosophy, agility philosophy, ways of working philosophy. Clarity. And I suppose that comes down to clarity in purpose, clarity in teams, clarity in systems. And if you don't have it, the one thing I often see is kind of an anti-pattern: complexity wins, and unfortunately agility dies.
That's truly a word of a inspirational leader, because clarity is something. I come from a marketing background, and if I do not have clarity from the leadership or anywhere where I worked, if there is no clarity from the bottom or of the top down, then the purpose is lost. So
Totally
clarity
agree.
defines it. Clarity defines the organization. Clarity defines your values, your philosophy going forward. So thank you so much for your time, and all those answers were amazing. I've learned a lot from this conversation, which is only been 40 minutes that we had conversed, and great insights. Thank you so much for taking time out for us, and giving us the pleasure to listen to your insights and gaining from your knowledge. Looking ahead, one piece of advice that you would want to give to the generation who aspire to be CIOs, CTOs, or CXOs in those positions in the next 5-10 years, what would it be? And what would be your way to communicate it to them?
I think if people know me, I think it would be to put culture first. Tech will continue to evolve constantly. We talked about it. You mentioned it earlier. It's sometimes even out of date 24 hours later. So tech will evolve, but people, how they work, how they learn, how they lead, they are the real engine, if you like, of innovation and resilience inside the organizational design. So for me, it would be probably learn to spot untapped potential inside the business, remove friction, and ultimately I want to, and I have to, model the behaviors I want to see others actually adopt inside the organization. So it's kind of like leading by design, not by default. And that's a real, again, mindset shift and a real leadership and growth mindset shift. Leading by design, not by default. And if I could leave people probably with, just one thought: frameworks don't transform organization, leaders do.
No, small words, but great value. Leading by design, not by default. So thank you for those insights. Nilesh, any closing points from you? I would.
I completely agree with you. Add to what Giles just said about leadership, right? And I go back to my point about AI. It's the culture and the people that make the organization. I think we've seen the trend recently coming up saying AI is going to come up with a lot of jobless issues and stuff like that. I think as leaders we need to talk about how do I use AI to make my business better, not necessarily reduce my workforce over here. I need to keep my workforce because my workforce builds the culture of my company and the sentiments that you talk about, increasing our sales and stuff like that. But the AI is supposed to be used to help enable them become better versions of themselves, right? Not replace them over there. So I think I'm happy to hear that, the thoughts that I have match with other leadership in the world around here. So thank you for sharing them. Tells me that at least I'm on the right path myself, and sharing the goals together. But once again, thank you so much for making the time. A lot of great insights over here. I look forward to continue this discussion with you offline. Hopefully see you in person over my next travels over there, and maybe continue the discussion to a bigger scale over there.
Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you, Mudit. Just really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for the amazing questions. Thank you for letting me obviously share my insights with everybody. And yes, Nilesh, certainly would love to catch up obviously next time you are in London.
Sounds like a plan.
Right. Thank you, Giles. Thank you, Nilesh. It's been a pleasure listening to both of you and sharing your journey, strategies, philosophy, and your insights. About what has the journey been like, and inspiring future CIOs to enrich upon also Nilesh's book and to add value to it. We will definitely be featuring you and asking for more inputs as we proceed into the phases of writing the book. To our audience, thank you for joining in on Leaders Lounge. Stay tuned for more conversations with leaders who are inspiring and shaping the future of technology, business progress. I'm Mudit Vyas, signing off from Leaders Lounge. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
everybody.
Bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye.